Dr. Sarah Chun had always believed that the most important discoveries happen by accident. She never expected that belief to be proven right on a cold Tuesday morning in the Montana wilderness. The meteorite had crashed 3 days ago, lighting up the sky like a second sun before disappearing beyond the tree line. The government satellites had tracked its trajectory, and Sarah's team from the Planetary Defense Institute had been dispatched to recover whatever remained. What they found defied everything they thought they knew about space rocks. The crater was perfectly circular, 30 feet across, and surprisingly shallow. Steam rose from the center where a metallic object rested, glowing with an inner light that seemed to pulse like a heartbeat. Sarah knelt at the crater's edge, her instruments detecting energy readings that made no sense. "This isn't a meteorite," whispered Dr. Marcus Webb, her research partner. His voice carried a mixture of excitement and fear. "The composition is unlike anything in our solar system. Look at these readings. It's generating its own electromagnetic field." Sarah slid down into the crater, her boots crunching on crystallized soil. The object was beautiful, smooth as glass, but warm to the touch. It was roughly oval-shaped, about the size of a small car, with swirling patterns beneath its surface that moved like liquid metal. As she approached, the pulsing light grew brighter. "Sarah, get back!" Marcus shouted from above. "The energy readings are spiking." But Sarah couldn't move. Something about the object called to her. She placed her gloved hand on its surface and felt a gentle vibration, almost like a purr. The swirling patterns beneath began to move faster, and she realized with growing amazement that they weren't random. They formed symbols, mathematical equations that spoke of advanced physics beyond human understanding. The object began to crack, not breaking apart like she expected, but opening like a flower. Segments separated with precise mechanical movements, revealing layers of technology that glowed with soft blue light. The air filled with a musical humming sound, and Sarah felt her heart racing as she peered inside. What she saw changed everything. Suspended in a web of crystalline fibers was a figure. Humanoid, but clearly not human. The being was small, perhaps 5 feet tall, with pale skin that seemed to shimmer with an inner radiance. Long, silver hair floated around a face that was strikingly beautiful. Angular cheekbones, large eyes closed in what appeared to be sleep, and features that were simultaneously alien and achingly familiar. "Marcus," Sarah called softly, her voice barely a whisper. "You need to see this." Her partner scrambled down into the crater, his equipment bag clanging against the rocky sides. When he reached her side and saw what lay within the open vessel, he dropped his scanner. "Is she—" he began. "Alive," Sarah finished, watching the gentle rise and fall of the being's chest. "She's alive." The crystalline fibers supporting the alien began to retract, lowering her gently toward the bottom of the vessel. As they did, the being's eyes fluttered open, large, violet eyes that seemed to hold the depth of galaxies. They focused immediately on Sarah with an intelligence that was unmistakably aware and alert. The alien tried to speak, her lips moving soundlessly at first. Then, impossibly, words came, not in any earthly language, but somehow Sarah understood them as clearly as if they had been spoken in English. "Please," the being said, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "I need your help. My ship, it was damaged. I crashed here by accident, not by choice." Sarah knelt beside the vessel, her scientific training warring with pure human compassion. "We want to help you. My name is Sarah. What's yours?" The alien smiled, and the expression transformed her already beautiful features into something radiant. "I am Lyra. I come from a world you call Kepler, 442b, though we know it as Ethros. I was traveling to your moon when my ship was struck by debris." Marcus finally found his voice. "Your moon? You were coming to our moon? Why?" Lyra's expression grew serious. "Because we've been watching your species, and we know what's coming. In 6 months, your world will face a threat that could end all life on Earth. An armada of ships from the Zorth Empire is heading here, intent on harvesting your planet's resources and enslaving any survivors. Sarah felt the blood drain from her face. An invasion? How do you know this? Because, Lyra said as she slowly sat up in her vessel, her movements graceful despite her obvious weakness. My people have been fighting the Zorith for centuries. We've seen them destroy dozens of worlds. Earth is next on their list, unless you can defend yourselves. The magnitude of what Lyra was saying began to sink in. Sarah looked at Marcus, seeing her own terror reflected in his eyes. But we're not ready for something like that. Our weapons, our technology, we can barely get to our own moon reliably. Lyra reached out and took Sarah's hand. Her touch was warm and somehow comforting. That's why I was coming to your moon base. My people wanted to establish contact to offer you our help. But now, she gestured weakly at her crashed vessel. I fear I may be too late. Your ship, Marcus said suddenly. Can it be repaired? No, Lyra replied sadly. It's far too damaged. But it contains information that could help your species prepare for what's coming. Technology that could level the playing field. Sarah made a decision that would change the course of human history. Then, we'll help you access it. And you'll help us understand it. Lyra's violet eyes brightened with hope. You would do this? Even knowing the danger it would bring. We're already in danger, Sarah replied firmly. The way I see it, you might be the only chance our species has. As if responding to their agreement, the vessel began to emit a new sound, a low, harmonious tone that seemed to resonate in their very bones. Symbols appeared in the air above them, holographic displays showing star maps, weapon schematics, and mathematical formulas that made Sarah's head spin. This is just the beginning, Lyra said as she struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on Sarah for support. If we're going to save your world, we have a lot of work to do and very little time to do it. Sarah helped Lyra climb out of the vessel, amazed at how light she felt. As they reached the crater's edge, the alien woman paused and looked up at the sky with an expression of deep sadness. What is it? Sarah asked. I'm looking for my ship's debris trail, Lyra explained. Some of the technology aboard was sensitive if it fell into the wrong hands. She shuddered. Marcus had been busy packing up his equipment, but he stopped at Lyra's words. What kind of sensitive technology? Lyra turned to him with an expression that made Sarah's heart skip a beat. Weapons that could crack a planet in half, or heal it completely. The Zorith would kill billions to get their hands on even a fragment of it. The weight of their situation settled over the three of them like a heavy blanket. They weren't just dealing with a first contact scenario anymore. They were potentially holding the keys to humanity's survival or its destruction. As they began the long walk back to their research camp, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that their quiet lives as simple scientists had just ended forever. But, looking at Lyra walking beside her, determined despite her obvious exhaustion, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. The most beautiful alien girl had indeed fallen from the sky. But she hadn't come bearing gifts of peace and enlightenment like in the old science fiction stories. She had come with a warning of war and the tools to fight it. Whether humanity was ready or not, the universe was about to test everything that made them human. The government facility in Colorado Springs hummed with activity 24 hours after Lyra's arrival. What had started as a routine meteorite recovery had become the most classified operation in human history. General Patricia Morrison stood in the observation deck, watching through reinforced glass as the alien woman worked alongside Sarah and a team of the world's brightest scientists. "This is insane," muttered Dr. James Harrison, the facility's chief physicist. "She's rewriting our understanding of physics faster than we can take notes." Lyra had spent the past day explaining concepts that should have taken human scientists decades to understand. Her vessel, though damaged beyond repair, had become a treasure trove of advanced technology. But, more importantly, she had begun teaching them about the debris scattered across 3 counties when her ship broke apart in the atmosphere. "The power core fragments are the most dangerous," Lyra explained to the assembled team, her violet eyes serious as she manipulated a holographic display that showed the crash site from space. "If the Zorith arrive and detect even one piece, they'll know I was here. Sarah leaned forward at the conference table. Over the past day, she had become Lyra's primary liaison, the one person the alien seemed to trust completely. How long before they arrive? My ship's destruction will have sent an automatic distress signal, Lyra replied. But the signal has to travel through subspace to reach my people. They'll come looking for me, but so will the Zorth scouts. We have perhaps 3 of your weeks before the first enemy ships arrive. General Morrison's voice came through the intercom from the observation deck. Miss Lyra, our satellite imagery shows debris scattered across a 40-mile radius. Some pieces have already been collected by civilian authorities. Lyra's expression darkened. Then, we may already be too late. General, you don't understand. Some of this technology is beyond your current ability to safely handle. A single power cell could level a city if it's destabilized. Dr. Harrison pulled up a map showing the debris field. Red dots marked confirmed recovery sites, while yellow indicated probable locations. We've got teams moving on all known sites, but there's a problem. 3 pieces were picked up by a private collector in Wyoming. He's been bragging online about finding alien metal that's warm to the touch and glows in the dark. Oh no, Lyra whispered, her face going pale. That sounds like a neural interface core. If a human touches it directly. She didn't finish the sentence, but Sarah could see the horror in her eyes. What happens? Your minds aren't prepared for the information transfer, Lyra explained quickly. It could burn out neural pathways, or worse, it could create a permanent link between the person and our technology. They would become something between human and Ethros. Marcus, who had been quiet during most of the briefing, suddenly spoke up. Could that be useful? I mean, if someone could interface directly with your technology. Lyra shook her head firmly. The process is unpredictable, and if the Zorth detected someone with that kind of neural modification, they would capture them and extract everything they knew about our technology. It would be like handing them our entire military database. General Morrison's voice cut through the discussion. Teams are moving on the Wyoming location now. But we have another problem. The collector posted photos online before we could stop him. The images have been viewed by millions of people. The room fell silent. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as the implication sank in. The whole world is going to know about this soon. Not just the world, Lyra said quietly. The Zorth monitor your global communications. They'll see those images and know exactly what they represent. Dr. Harrison pulled up one of the photos on the main screen. It showed a man holding a piece of crystalline metal that pulsed with inner light. The man was grinning widely, completely unaware that he was holding technology more advanced than anything on Earth. How long before the Zorth can trace those signals back to the source? General Morrison asked. Lyra closed her eyes, and Sarah noticed she seemed to be calculating something in her head. If they've already detected the communication signatures, 12 hours. Maybe less. The weight of impending disaster settled over the room. Sarah watched as Lyra stood and walked to the window, staring out at the mountains beyond the facility. There's one option, Lyra said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. But it would require your people to trust me completely, and it would change everything about how your species develops. General Morrison came down from the observation deck, entering the conference room for the first time. She was a tall woman with gray hair and steel in her eyes. Explain. Lyra turned from the window. My vessel's main computer core is still intact. It contains the complete technological database of my people, weapons, defenses, spacecraft, everything. But more than that, it contains our history, our mistakes, and our hard-won knowledge about fighting the Zorth. And the catch, the general asked. The information can only be accessed through a neural link. And once that link is established, it cannot be broken. The person who interfaces with the core will have access to centuries of Ethros knowledge, but they will also carry the responsibility of using it wisely. Sarah felt her heart start racing. You're talking about permanently altering someone's mind. Yes, Lyra admitted. The person would become a bridge between our species. They would understand both human and Ethros technology, could design hybrid systems that might give your people a fighting chance. But they would no longer be entirely human. Dr. Harrison leaned back in his chair. The risks are enormous. We don't know what that kind of neural modification could do to a human mind. The risks of not doing it are greater, Lyra replied firmly. Without this knowledge, your species will fall to the Zorith within days of their arrival. General Morrison studied Lyra carefully. If we agreed to this, who would undergo the procedure? It should be someone who understands both technology and warfare, Lyra said. Someone whose mind is flexible enough to adapt to alien concepts, but strong enough not to be overwhelmed by them. The room fell quiet as everyone considered the implications. Sarah found herself thinking about the collector in Wyoming, about the Zorith ships heading toward Earth, about the billions of people who had no idea their world was about to change forever. "I'll do it," she said suddenly. Every eye in the room turned to her. Marcus looked horrified. "Sarah, you can't. We don't know what it could do to you." "We don't have a choice," she replied firmly. Lyra is right. Without this knowledge, we're all dead anyway. At least this way, we have a chance. Lyra moved to stand beside Sarah. "Are you certain? The process cannot be undone. You would have access to knowledge that no human has ever possessed, but you would also carry the burden of decisions that could affect the survival of both our species." Sarah looked around the room at the faces of her colleagues and superiors. She saw fear, uncertainty, but also a glimmer of hope. "Someone has to do it. And I trust you, Lyra. If you think this is our best chance, then I'm willing to take the risk." General Morrison nodded slowly. "Dr. Chun, I want you to understand that what you're proposing goes beyond any previous human experience. You're volunteering to become something new." "Understand," Sarah replied. "But look at what's at stake. If we do nothing, the human race ends in 3 weeks. If we try this, maybe we can give our species a fighting chance." Lyra placed a gentle hand on Sarah's shoulder. "The process will take several hours, and it cannot be done here. We'll need to access my ship's computer core directly." "The ship is still in the crater?" Marcus asked. "Parts of it, yes. The main core is buried deep, but it's still functional." "However," Lyra hesitated. "There's something else you need to know. Once the neural link is established, the computer core will begin transmitting a signal that my people will be able to detect. It will call them to Earth." General Morrison's eyes sharpened. "Your people? How many ships are we talking about?" "A full battle fleet," Lyra admitted. "Perhaps 50 vessels, each one capable of destroying a continent. They'll come to help, but their arrival will also signal to the Zorith that Earth is under Ethros protection." "Which means?" Dr. Harrison asked. Lyra's expression was grim. "It means the battle for your world will be fought here, in your skies, above your cities. The Zorith will bring everything they have to break that protection." Sarah felt the weight of the decision settling on her shoulders. By agreeing to the neural link, she wouldn't just be gaining alien knowledge. She would be triggering an interstellar war with Earth as the battleground. But as she looked around the room, she realized that war was coming anyway. At least this way, humanity wouldn't have to face it alone. "When do we start?" she asked. Lyra smiled, and for a moment the expression transformed her alien features into something almost human. "We start tonight. By dawn, you'll either be the first human to carry Ethros knowledge in her mind, or—" She didn't finish the sentence, but Sarah understood. By dawn, she would either be humanity's first real hope against the coming invasion, or she would be dead. The thought should have terrified her. Instead, she felt a strange sense of calm. Sometimes the biggest discoveries really did happen by accident. And sometimes, when the stakes were high enough, accidents were exactly what the universe needed. The Montana crash site looked different at night. Under the pale moonlight, the crater seemed to glow with an otherworldly energy that made Sarah's skin tingle. She stood at its edge beside Lyra, wearing a specialized suit that the alien had designed using salvaged materials from the facility's laboratories. "The suit will protect you during the initial connection," Lyra explained, her breath visible in the cold mountain air. "But once the link is established, the barriers between your mind and the computer core will dissolve completely. Behind them, General Morrison's team had set up a mobile command center. Medical equipment hummed quietly, ready to monitor Sarah's vital signs during the procedure. Dr. Harrison checked his instruments one final time, while Marcus paced nervously near the crater's edge. "Sarah," Marcus called out, his voice tight with worry. "It's not too late to find another way." Sarah turned to look at her research partner and longtime friend. "Marcus, we've been over this. The Zorth ships will arrive in 18 days. We need this knowledge now, not next month or next year." Lyra pointed toward the center of the crater, where her damaged vessel lay partly buried in the crystallized soil. "The computer core is 30 feet below the surface. My ship's emergency protocols sealed it in a protective shell when we crashed, but the neural interface systems are still functional." "How do I access them?" Sarah asked. Instead of answering with words, Lyra began to hum. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, like a song made of wind and starlight. As her voice rose and fell, the buried ship began to respond. Lights flickered to life beneath the earth, and Sarah felt a vibration in her bones as massive machinery awakened after 3 days of silence. The ground in the center of the crater began to shift and flow like liquid. Sarah watched in amazement as the earth parted to reveal a tunnel lined with the same crystalline material as Lyra's vessel. The tunnel sloped downward at a gentle angle, illuminated by soft blue light that seemed to come from the walls themselves. "The ship is creating a path," Lyra explained. "It recognizes my biorhythms and is responding to my commands. But, Sarah, once we go down there, there's no turning back. The computer core will detect your presence, and the neural link protocols will activate automatically." Sarah nodded, surprised by how calm she felt. "I understand. Let's do this." They descended into the tunnel together, their footsteps echoing off the crystalline walls. The air grew warmer as they went deeper, and Sarah could hear a low humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. After about 5 minutes of walking, the tunnel opened into a vast chamber that took Sarah's breath away. The computer core was beautiful beyond description. It hung in the center of the chamber like a miniature star, a sphere of pure light surrounded by thousands of thin crystalline filaments that stretched from floor to ceiling. The filaments pulsed with data streams, carrying information at speeds that made Sarah dizzy just to watch. "This is it," Lyra said softly. "The entire knowledge base of my people, compressed into a quantum matrix that exists partially in this dimension and partially in subspace." Sarah approached the core slowly, feeling its energy wash over her in waves. "How does the link work?" Lyra gestured to a platform that rose from the chamber floor as they approached. It was clearly designed for someone to lie down on, with neural interface points that looked like silver flowers along its surface. "You lie on the platform, and the interface points will make contact with your nervous system," Lyra explained. "The initial connection will be gentle, just enough to let the core assess your mental patterns and adjust its data transfer protocols accordingly. And then the real work begins. The core will begin downloading Ethero's knowledge directly into your mind. Technology, history, tactical information, cultural understanding. Everything you'll need to help your people prepare for what's coming." Sarah climbed onto the platform, feeling the cool metal against her back. The interface points moved on their own, positioning themselves at various points along her skull, neck, and spine. She felt a slight tingling sensation as they made contact through her suit. "How long will it take?" she asked. "For a complete transfer?" "Several hours. But you'll begin receiving critical information within minutes." Lyra's expression grew serious. "Sarah, I need you to know something. The knowledge you're about to receive has been earned through centuries of struggle. My people have fought and died for every technological advance, every tactical insight. You'll experience some of those memories as if they were your own." "I'm ready," Sarah said, though she wasn't entirely sure that was true. Lyra placed her hand on a control panel that had risen from the chamber floor. "The core is requesting final authorization." Are you certain you want to proceed? Sarah looked up at the beautiful alien who had become her friend in just 2 short days. Do it. The moment Lyra activated the system, Sarah's world exploded into light and sensation. Information flooded her mind faster than she could process. Technical specifications for weapons that could shatter mountains, star charts showing the locations of thousands of civilizations, battle plans refined through generations of warfare against the Zorith Empire. But more than technical knowledge, she received memories. She experienced the fall of Kepler, 186F, through the eyes of an Ethros commander watching helplessly as Zorith ships reduced a living world to ash and stone. She felt the desperation of scientists working around the clock to develop new defensive technologies as their colonies fell one by one. She shared the grief of parents whose children would never see their homeworld again. Through it all, she began to understand the true scope of the Zorith threat. The Empire wasn't just a collection of warships. It was a civilization built on conquest and consumption. They had been expanding across the galaxy for millennia, devouring worlds and enslaving populations with ruthless efficiency. But she also saw hope. The Ethros had learned to fight back. Their technology had evolved from purely defensive to devastatingly effective offensive capabilities. They had developed weapons that could turn a star into a supernova, shields that could protect entire planets, and, most importantly, strategies that had stopped the Zorith expansion in their home sector. As the data transfer continued, Sarah began to understand why Lyra had been so concerned about the neural link. The knowledge came with perspectives and instincts that were decidedly non-human. She could feel her thought patterns shifting, becoming more analytical and long-term oriented. Problems that had seemed impossible hours ago now had clear, if complex, solutions. She saw how Earth's military technology could be enhanced with Ethros improvements. Nuclear weapons that could be made 1,000 times more powerful, aircraft that could achieve near-light speed in atmosphere, defensive systems that could protect entire continents from orbital bombardment. More importantly, she began to understand human strengths that the Ethros lacked. Where Lyra's people were cautious and methodical, humans were innovative and adaptable. Where the Ethros planned in centuries, humans could react and improvise in moments. The combination of Ethros' knowledge and human instincts could create something neither species had achieved alone. Hours passed in what felt like minutes. Sarah's consciousness expanded beyond anything she had thought possible, touching on concepts that human language had no words for. She experienced space not as an empty void, but as a living medium that could be shaped and manipulated. She understood time as a dimension that could be traversed under the right conditions. When the transfer finally completed, Sarah opened eyes that saw the world in entirely new ways. The chamber around her was no longer just a room. She could see the quantum field interactions that held it together, the subspace communication channels that connected it to the surface, the energy flow patterns that powered its systems. "How would you feel?" Lyra asked, her voice filled with concern and curiosity. Sarah sat up slowly, her mind still processing the vast amount of new information. "Different. Like I'm still me, but more than I was before." She paused, studying her hands as if seeing them for the first time. "I can see solutions to problems we didn't even know we had." From her new perspective, the coming battle with the Zorith looked very different. It was still dangerous. The Empire commanded resources that dwarfed both Earth and Ethros combined. But humanity had advantages that could be exploited. "The neural link is stable," Sarah announced, though she wasn't sure how she knew that. "I can feel the computer core's connection to the quantum matrix." And she paused, processing a new stream of information. "I'm detecting something else. Subspace communications." Lyra's eyes widened. "Already? The signal shouldn't have reached, not from your people," Sarah interrupted, her enhanced awareness picking up transmission patterns that felt cold and predatory. "The Zorith. They've detected the neural link activation." The implications hit them both at the same time. The enemy wasn't coming in 18 days. They were already on their way, and they were moving faster than anyone had anticipated. How long do we have? Lyra asked. Sarah closed her eyes, letting her enhanced consciousness reach out through subspace to track the incoming signals. What she found made her blood run cold. 72 hours, she announced. Maybe less. The chamber suddenly filled with alarms as the computer core detected the same threat Sarah had identified. Emergency protocols activated throughout the buried ship, preparing for immediate departure that would never come. We need to get back to the surface, Sarah said, climbing down from the platform. I have a lot of work to do, and not much time to do it. As they made their way back through the tunnel, Sarah's mind was already racing with possibilities. The knowledge she now carried showed her dozens of ways to enhance Earth's defenses, but most of them would require weeks or months to implement. But there was one option that could be deployed immediately. It was dangerous, potentially catastrophic if it went wrong, but it might give humanity the time they needed to prepare for the larger battle ahead. Lyra, Sarah said as they emerged from the crater, how would you feel about turning our moon into a weapon? The alien woman stared at her in shock, then slowly began to smile. I think, she said, that you're going to be a very dangerous human to have around. Sarah grinned back, feeling the vast knowledge of an ancient civilization flowing through her mind. The Zorth have no idea what they're about to face. Above them, the stars looked different now. No longer distant points of light, but destinations waiting to be reached. The universe had just become a much smaller place, and humanity was about to claim their place among its defenders. The emergency session of the United Nations Security Council was unlike anything in the organization's history. Representatives from every major nation sat in stunned silence as Sarah stood before them, her eyes glowing with an inner light that seemed to reflect the vast knowledge now stored in her mind. 72 hours, she repeated, her voice carrying an authority that hadn't been there 3 days ago. The Zorth advanced scouts will arrive in 72 hours. The main invasion force will follow within a week. The Chinese representative, Dr. Li Wei, leaned forward. Dr. Chun, with all due respect, you're asking us to believe that alien invaders are coming to Earth based on the word of another alien who crashed here by accident. Sarah's enhanced awareness let her see things that normal human senses couldn't detect. The micro-expressions that revealed fear beneath Dr. Li's skeptical words, the elevated heart rates of everyone in the room, the electromagnetic signatures of their various recording devices. More importantly, she could feel the subspace distortions caused by the approaching Zorth ships, growing stronger every hour. Dr. Li, Sarah said calmly, in approximately 6 hours, your satellite surveillance network will detect energy signatures approaching from the outer solar system. These signatures will match known human technology. When that happens, we'll have 66 hours to prepare Earth's defenses. Lyra, who had been standing quietly beside the podium, stepped forward. I understand your skepticism. My people were equally doubtful when we first received warnings about the Zorth Empire. That doubt cost us 7 worlds before we finally accepted the truth. General Morrison had been silent throughout most of the briefing, but now she addressed the assembly. Ladies and gentlemen, regardless of your personal beliefs about Dr. Chen's transformation, we have confirmed evidence that technologies far beyond our current capabilities exist. The debris from Miss Lyra's ship alone represents advances that could revolutionize our civilization. Which brings us to our options, Sarah continued, calling up a holographic display that materialized above the conference table. The sight of technology that shouldn't exist drew gasps from several delegates. The display showed Earth and its moon, with overlaid tactical information that only Sarah and Lyra could fully understand. We cannot evacuate 7 billion people in 72 hours. We cannot hide our planet from sensors that can detect quantum signatures from light years away. We have exactly one choice. We defend ourselves. The Russian delegate, Major General Volkov, stood up. Dr. Chun, even if we accept your timeline, our combined military forces are designed to fight other humans, not alien invaders with superior technology. Sarah nodded. Which is why we're not going to fight them with conventional weapons. She manipulated the holographic display, showing what appeared to be construction plans for massive installations. The knowledge I received includes defensive technologies that can be implemented quickly using resources we already have access to. Such as, asked the British representative. We're going to turn Luna into a fortress, Sarah announced. The moon's mass and position make it an ideal platform for planetary defense systems. More importantly, the low gravity and vacuum environment are perfect for deploying Ethros technology. Dr. Harrison, who had been serving as Sarah's technical liaison, pulled up detailed specifications. The plan calls for converting our existing lunar installations into power generation stations for a planetary shield matrix. The energy requirements are enormous, but achievable. And the weapons? Asked the French delegate. Sarah's expression grew grim. We're going to give the moon teeth. Quantum field manipulators that can create artificial gravity wells, particle beam projectors that can reach any point in the solar system, and if necessary. She paused. We can turn Luna itself into a kinetic weapon. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. The idea of weaponizing the moon challenged every assumption about space being a peaceful frontier. Lyra raised her hand for silence. I know this is difficult to accept, but you must understand, the Zorith have conquered thousands of worlds. They've faced every conventional defense you can imagine. The only way to surprise them is to do something they've never seen before. Which is, asked Dr. Lee. Humans, Sarah replied simply. The Ethros defend by building stronger shields and better hiding places. Most species try to negotiate or flee when faced with impossible odds. But humans, she smiled, and there was something fierce in her expression. Humans fight back even when they know they can't win. General Morrison stood up. Dr. Chun, assuming we accept your plan, what do you need from us? Sarah called up a new display showing resource allocation charts. Every available launch vehicle on Earth. All lunar construction equipment. Emergency authorization to convert industrial facilities to military production. And, most importantly, I need everyone in this room to convince their governments that the next 72 hours will determine whether human civilization survives or becomes a footnote in galactic history. The weight of her words settled over the assembly like a heavy blanket. Sarah could see the exact moment when skepticism gave way to acceptance in each delegate's face. There's something else, Lyra added quietly. The neural link between Dr. Chun and my ship's computer core is transmitting a signal that my people will eventually detect. They'll send a fleet to investigate, but they won't arrive for several months. Until then, Earth is on its own. How many ships in a Zorth invasion force? Asked General Volkov. Sarah closed her eyes briefly, accessing the tactical databases now stored in her mind. Advanced scouts, 12 ships, each one capable of destroying a continent. Main invasion force, approximately 300 ships with enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Command ship, a mobile fortress the size of Manhattan with weapons that can ignite a star. The silence that followed was deafening. However, Sarah continued, they're not expecting resistance. The Zorith strategy relies on overwhelming force against unprepared targets. They've never faced a species that knew they were coming and had time to prepare. Dr. Harrison activated his tablet, showing construction timelines. The lunar installations can be operational in 60 hours if we strip every available resource from Earth. But the shield generators will need 12 hours to charge to full power, which gives us a 6-hour window between the shields going online and the Zorith arrival, General Morrison calculated. That's cutting it very close. There's another problem, Lyra said reluctantly. The energy signatures from the shield generators and weapons will be visible across the solar system. Once they're activated, every spacefaring civilization within 50 light years will know that Earth has been contacted by an advanced species. Is that bad? Asked the Japanese delegate. It depends, Sarah replied. The Ethros will see it as a call for help and send reinforcements. But there are other species who might view a newly armed human civilization as a threat to be eliminated. The complexity of their situation was becoming clear. Earth was about to be thrust into a galactic community that operated by rules humanity had never imagined. Dr. Chun, Dr. Lee said finally, what you're proposing will cost trillions of dollars and require the cooperation of every nation on Earth. The political implications alone, Dr. Lee, Sarah interrupted gently, in 72 hours, politics as we know it will cease to exist. We'll either be a free species working together to defend our world, or we'll be slaves to an empire that views us as useful labor for mining our planet's resources. She manipulated the holographic display one final time, showing satellite imagery of a world the Ethros had failed to defend. Where cities had once stood, there were only empty craters. Where forests had grown, there was only barren rock. This is what happens to species that aren't ready when the Zorth arrive, Sarah said quietly. This is what will happen to Earth if we fail. The image hung in the air above the conference table, a stark reminder of what was at stake. Sarah watched as the reality of their situation finally sank in for everyone present. General Morrison was the first to speak. What do you need me to do? Coordinate the military response, Sarah replied immediately. Every launch vehicle, every construction team, every engineer who can work in zero gravity. We have 60 hours to build defenses that have never been attempted in human history. And us? Asked Dr. Lee, gesturing to the other delegates. Convince your governments that this is real, Lyra said. Convince them to commit everything they have to this effort. Because if we fail, there won't be another chance. One by one, the delegates began reaching for their phones and tablets, initiating calls that would ripple across the globe. Sarah watched the beginning of humanity's first truly united effort, brought together not by shared ideals or common goals, but by the simple need to survive. As the meeting broke up, Marcus approached her quietly. Sarah, are you still in there? Behind all that alien knowledge, she smiled, and for a moment he could see his old research partner in her eyes. I'm still me, Marcus, but I'm more than I was. And right now, that's exactly what humanity needs. Outside the UN building, the first cargo ships were already beginning their journey toward launch facilities around the world. The largest construction project in human history was about to begin, with a deadline that couldn't be missed and stakes that couldn't be higher. The transformation of Luna from Earth's peaceful companion into humanity's first line of defense had officially begun. 67 hours after the emergency UN session, Sarah stood in the newly constructed command center buried deep beneath the lunar surface. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the transformed landscape of humanity's ancient companion. Where research stations had once dotted the gray surface, massive defensive installations now reached toward the star-filled void. The shield generators hummed with barely contained energy, their crystalline cores adapted from Lyra's technology and powered by fusion reactors that had been assembled in record time. Weapon emplacements tracked across the sky with mechanical precision, their targeting systems locked onto the growing energy signatures at the edge of the solar system. 67 ships, reported Commander Elena Vasquez, the former ISS commander who had been placed in charge of Luna-based defense. Not 12 like we expected. They're bringing everything. Sarah's enhanced consciousness reached out through the quantum network that now connected Earth and Luna, processing data streams that would have overwhelmed any unmodified human mind. The Zorth advance force was larger than predicted, but their formation and approach vectors matched tactical patterns from the Ethros database. They've done this before, she announced to the command crew. Same approach pattern they used on Kepler, 442b 3 centuries ago. They're not expecting resistance. Lyra, who had been monitoring communications arrays, looked up from her station. Sarah, I'm detecting something unusual. The Zorth ships are broadcasting on frequencies typically used for slave coordination protocols. Meaning, they're not just planning to invade, Lyra replied grimly. They're already organizing labor assignments for the human population they expect to capture. The casual cruelty of it struck Sarah like a physical blow. To the Zorth, the 7 billion people of Earth weren't enemies to be fought. They were resources to be harvested. The invasion wasn't an act of war. It was a business transaction. That realization crystallized something in Sarah's hybrid consciousness. The Ethros' knowledge provided tactics and technology, but it was her human instincts that provided the will to fight. All stations, this is Luna Base Command, she announced over the global communications network. Enemy vessels will reach the outer detection grid in 47 minutes. All defensive systems are to be brought online at T-30. Around the solar system, automated defense platforms activated. Asteroid mining stations had been hastily converted into weapons platforms. The International Space Station had been evacuated and transformed into a command relay. Even the Mars colony had contributed, turning their industrial equipment into long-range sensor arrays. Dr. Chun, came a voice from Earth's military command center. We're reading massive energy buildups around Luna. Are the weapons systems functioning normally? Sarah smiled grimly as she watched the power readings climb beyond anything human technology had ever achieved. They're functioning exactly as designed, General Morrison. The Zorth are about to learn that humans don't surrender easily. The first contact came 38 minutes later. I'm reading 12 vessels breaking off from a main force, reported Lieutenant Park from the sensor station. They're moving ahead of the fleet, probably scouts checking for resistance. Perfect, Sarah muttered, her fingers dancing over control systems that responded to her thoughts as much as her touch. The neural link had made her the perfect interface between human instinct and Ethros technology. All defensive systems target the scout formation. Let's introduce ourselves properly. The first salvo from Luna's weapons was unlike anything in human history. Particle beams reached across millions of miles in seconds, guided by targeting computers that could track individual molecules. The effect was spectacular and immediate. 3 Zorth scout ships simply ceased to exist, vaporized by energies that turned their exotic matter hulls into expanding clouds of plasma. The remaining 9 scattered, their formation discipline breaking as they encountered resistance no one had told them to expect. Direct hits on targets 1, 3, and 7, Commander Vasquez reported with barely contained excitement. Enemy vessels are regrouping, but they seem confused by our weapons' signatures. Through the quantum link, Sarah could feel the shock rippling through the Zorth fleet. Their communications networks buzzed with urgent updates as tactical computers try to classify weapons they had never encountered before. They're not sure if we're Ethros or something else, Lyra translated from the intercepted transmissions. Their databases don't have any record of humans as a spacefaring species. Let's keep them guessing, Sarah replied, triggering the second phase of the defense plan. Around Earth, the planetary shield matrix activated. Invisible force fields sprang to life in the upper atmosphere, powered by the lunar reactors and guided by targeting systems that had been refined over centuries of warfare. To any observer, it would appear that Earth itself had become a fortress. The reaction from the Zorth fleet was immediate. The remaining scout ships retreated rapidly while the main force changed course, moving into a standard siege formation that assumed they were facing a heavily defended Ethros colony. They're calling for reinforcements, Lyra announced. Standard Imperial protocol when facing unexpected resistance. Sarah had been expecting this. The Ethros tactical database had prepared her for every possible Zorth response. How long before the reinforcements arrive? 6 days, minimum. They'll want to bring enough ships to ensure complete victory. Perfect. That gives us almost a week to make them regret coming here. The main battle began an hour later as the Zorth invasion force reached Earth's outer orbital zone. 67 ships, each one a technological marvel capable of destroying continents, opened fire on the planetary defenses with weapons that had conquered half the galaxy. The shield matrix held. Explosions that should have cracked Earth's crust were deflected harmlessly into space. Energy beams that could boil oceans were absorbed and redirected back at their sources. For the first time in centuries, the Zorth Empire found themselves facing defenses they couldn't simply overwhelm with superior firepower. Impossible, came a transmission from the Zorth command ship, translated by Lyra's equipment. These are Ethros weapons, but the tactical responses are all wrong. No Ethros commander would be this aggressive. Sarah grinned as she coordinated the counterattack. The lunar weapons platforms opened fire in sequence, their beams reaching across space to strike targets with precision that seemed almost supernatural. But it wasn't supernatural. It was the result of combining Ethros technology with human adaptability. Where Ethros tactics called for defensive positioning and gradual engagement, Sarah attacked with the kind of aggressive unpredictability that had won wars throughout human history. She feinted toward the enemy's left flank, drawing their attention, then struck at their rear guard with everything Lunabase could deliver. 5 more Zorth ships died in the first exchange, their hulls cracked open by weapons they had never learned to defend against. The survivors regrouped, but their formation was ragged, their coordination broken by tactics that defied everything in their tactical databases. The enemy commander is requesting terms for our surrender, Lyra reported with obvious amusement. Tell them, Sarah replied, that humans don't have a word for surrender in our military vocabulary. It wasn't entirely true, but the sentiment was accurate enough. As the battle continued, Sarah felt something that the Ethros' knowledge couldn't provide. The fierce joy of fighting for her home, her species, her world. The Zorth had expected to face either primitives with no defenses or Ethros with predictable tactics. Instead, they found themselves fighting a hybrid force that combined the best technology in the galaxy with the most unpredictable tactical minds in the universe. Dr. Chun, came a transmission from the Lunar Engineering Station. We're detecting massive energy buildups in the enemy command ship. They appear to be charging some kind of superweapon. Sarah's enhanced consciousness immediately accessed the relevant tactical files. A planet killer designed to crack continental plates and render worlds uninhabitable. The Zorth were escalating to total destruction rather than accept defeat. All stations, prepare for Impact Protocol 7, she announced calmly. Around Luna, massive structural supports began extending from the moon's surface. The installations that had been built in 60 hours were about to attempt something that had never been tried in galactic history. Sarah, Lyra said urgently, you're not actually planning to move the moon? Yes, I am. Sarah's fingers flew over controls that were responding to her thoughts in real time. The Ethros' knowledge includes the theoretical framework. Human engineering made it practical. The gravitational manipulators that had been installed around Luna's equator activated simultaneously. Space itself began to bend around Earth's satellite as forces that existed only in advanced physics textbooks were unleashed on a scale that dwarfed anything previously attempted. Luna began to move. Not quickly. The moon's mass was far too great for rapid acceleration. But, measurably, undeniably, Earth's ancient companion began to shift its orbit, carrying its weapons platforms and shield generators into a new position that would give optimal firing angles on the Zorth fleet. The effect on the enemy was immediate and profound. Zorth tactical computers simply didn't have protocols for dealing with maneuverable planets. Their superweapon, designed to target a stationary world, lost its lock as Luna's gravitational field shifted. Now, Sarah announced, every weapon on Luna fired simultaneously. 67 Zorth ships found themselves caught in a crossfire that came from directions their shields weren't designed to protect. The combined firepower of humanity's first space fortress struck the alien fleet like the hammer of an angry god. When the energy discharges faded, empty space stretched where the invasion fleet had been. 67 ships, carrying technology that represented thousands of years of Zorth advancement, had been reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas. The silence that followed was profound. All stations report, Sarah called out, her enhanced senses already detecting the quantum signatures that indicated success. Luna base to all units, Commander Vasquez announced, her voice filled with wonder. Enemy fleet has been completely destroyed. I repeat, enemy fleet has been completely destroyed. Cheers erupted from every station in the defense network. On Earth, 7 billion people who had held their breath for 3 days finally exhaled in relief. Humanity's first interstellar war had lasted 6 hours and ended in complete victory. But Sarah knew this was only the beginning. The reinforcements Lyra had mentioned would arrive within the week, bringing enough ships to glass entire solar systems. More importantly, the entire galaxy now knew that Earth possessed weapons capable of moving planets and destroying fleets. "Lyra," she said as the celebration continued around them, "how long before your people arrive?" "The quantum signature from our victory will reach them in approximately 4 months," Lyra replied. "They'll send everything they have." Sarah nodded, her enhanced consciousness already planning for the larger conflicts ahead. Humanity had won their first battle, but the war was just beginning. "Then we'd better get ready," she said, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed distant and untouchable. "Because something tells me the rest of the galaxy is about to take notice of the species that thought they could conquer us." As Luna slowly returned to its normal orbit, the weapons platforms already beginning construction of even more advanced defenses, Sarah felt a deep satisfaction. The beautiful alien girl who had crashed in Montana had brought warnings of war and the tools to fight it. But it had been human determination, human ingenuity, and human refusal to surrender that had turned those tools into victory. The universe was about to learn that humanity was no one's conquest. They were the newest players in a very old game, and they intended to win.